Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here at our Chapel Plus podcast. My name is Edwin Perez, and so grateful to be with all of you here. I'm one of the pastors here and joined by wonderful colleagues and friends, and really grateful for the opportunity that we have to talk and discuss just even things that we hear on a Sunday morning, but also pressing that through, right? Like, how do we apply that on a Monday? What does that look like throughout our week? How do we continue to think about these things so that they're not quickly forgotten, but we apply them within our hearts, within our lives? And so really excited for our conversation, as we just heard a powerful message from Pastor Jerry yesterday on the idea of baptism and being a witness to the saving work of Jesus. And so plenty to unpack there. But let me introduce those around the table with me here today. To my right, I have Oren. How are you?
I'm doing great, Edwin. Thanks for being here. Yeah, Oren Helfrich. I serve on staff here with students and kids and families, and had the privilege of being in the baptismal yesterday. I tell everybody when I happen to get the opportunity to be up there and people stop me after, I say it's the best part of the job, getting to walk with people through that and share in that moment. So great topic today.
That's great. And then around the table here, we have Jay Perillo.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here, and certainly excited about, just the topic today, and, how we can press into that. So glad to be here.
And then Sean Cook.
Hey, yeah, what's up, everybody? I am looking forward to this. I think as we dig into this topic of baptism, I don't think we can go too much further. I'm stuck on the quote that Pastor Jerry shared yesterday. He was talking about this church historical document written to Syrian Christians in the 2nd century. And he was talking about the ideal components for baptism. And the one that stuck out to me was this: and if you're not able to baptize with cold water, then baptize with warm water. And if you possess neither cold water or warm water, pour water on the head 3 times. And I was thinking, Oren, I don't know how warm the baptistry was yesterday. There have been times where I've done baptism here, and we've done exactly what these folks were instructing. The coldest of water was available to us.
There we go.
Yeah, I made that same joke yesterday. I was sitting with a couple of the ladies that were getting ready to be baptized, and the first time I ever baptized in our church, I had a 6th grade boy with me. Shout out to Liam. Freezing cold water, lots of apologies. And I think the first 3 times that I got into the baptismal, either the heater was broken or it just didn't get turned on. And so it always makes for a refreshing morning. Little behind the scenes peek. If you walk backstage and you see our facilities guys dumping buckets of hot water into the baptismal to try to bring that temperature up a little, you know you're in for a cool jaunt in the baptismal.
But I did tell folks not that long ago that we had another. Again, it's not all the time. Most times it's really comfortable, it's really great. So just don't let this scare you in any way. But once in a while we have issues. Yeah. And I said, we're going to start doing a study to see the people who were baptized in cold water. Do they have a stronger, more rooted faith years later? Absolutely. And does it come back to the baptismal waters?
Has their growth been exponential?
Yes, exactly. I'd like to know the answer to that. If so, pour in the ice cubes, man. Let's get to it.
I mean, I'm all for that just because of, the whole cold plunge phenomenon.
There you go.
Health benefits. So
that's right. Yeah.
I've bought into that. So,
That's great. But in all seriousness, it was a really good message. I was saying before we started here, a wonderful response from our church. When we hear a message where the command is simple, Jesus clearly instructed disciples to be baptized, for us to make disciples and to baptize them. That's what Pastor Jerry was talking out of yesterday. And we saw, I think you were saying just a minute ago, almost 80 people that took that step of saying, hey, I'm interested in being baptized. So I think it's a good conversation for us to have, even beyond the message. And as a reminder, as we're tracking these messages, if you didn't hear the message from Sunday, May 17th, go back on our YouTube channel or wherever you can find that and listen to the message, because this conversation is an attachment to or an extension of that. You'll track better with us if you've heard that. But guys, let's talk a little bit about even just some of the the observations that we've seen and some of the ways in which baptism, yes, is an act of obedience, but also what a blessing and joy it is to see when people take that step, what it does. And Oren, you were in the baptistry yesterday and got to be a part of at least that process for 3 people and know some of those folks and know their stories. So tell us what comes to your mind there.
Yeah, I just I said earlier, like it's just one of the best parts of this job, and you get to see most folks that come forward. There's a little hesitation, a little nervousness, right? You're getting up in front of people. Some people are nervous because they're in front of their family that they know. Some of them are nervous because they're in front of folks that they don't know. But to see them walk through that and be impacted by the Lord, to share their faith and to say, yeah, I might be a little bit nervous, but God has done a work in my life. They're really, I tell folks this all the time. You're up here to preach the gospel. Like Pastor Jerry's going to, or whoever's speaking that day, maybe it's Edwin or Jay up there or John, like they get to teach from God's word. Yeah. They get to, but you're up here as a living embodiment of what Christ has done in your life. You get to not only see that that parallel of going into the water to be identifying with Christ and his suffering and in his death and raising a new life, but we get to hear how God has worked in your life. And when people are willing to be vulnerable like that and share, it's so impactful. And it's such a blessing to just be a part of and witness. I find myself sometimes up there, they get emotional. I'm like, I got to try to hold it together so I can say these words and not mix it up. And, it's such a blessing to be a part of walking with people as they walk with Jesus.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even to see, we even had a student baptism yesterday too. And to see young folks, young people in our church that are willing to profess their faith in Jesus. What an encouragement, right? Even in a day and age when there's so much confusion among our youth, and man, to see living testimonies of the work of Christ in and through them is really powerful. And I'm sure, even John, I know you baptized your daughter at one point, and just being able to have those opportunities is what a special thing, right? To be able to see even some of the youth in our church, and to even see discipleship go across the generations too. That's an amazing thing, even within our homes.
Yeah, and there's some unique things that I think come from baptism that isn't always the way that these things go. But I was having a conversation yesterday with some folks talking about even the barriers that may be perceived in baptism here.
Yeah.
And there are some, right? I mean, we like to remind people that it's not as risky today to get baptized as it was in the first century. That's for sure,
that's
right?
True.
And maybe something for us to talk about here. But I also think that it's a good understanding to know what is produced in someone when they take that step. And I think you just said it, Edwin. One of the things that was cool, even for my daughter, my son just walked through the same class, and as he's considering baptism as well, is the refinement of their grace story.
Yeah.
That, I've seen a genuine profession of faith, but to prepare to be able to articulate that in a way that they can convey to someone is a wonderful thing to develop, right?
Yeah.
Because it allows us then to share with others, to know and share our grace story is one of the outcomes of discipleship we want to see. So there is also, a bit of a fear factor, intimidation component to standing in front of a lot of people.
Sure.
But I also think that's preparation, man, for the ability to be able to do that, to stand before people and let your light shine, right? So what have you guys experienced or seen there? Yeah, Jay?
Yeah, I've definitely had some conversations around that, just in terms of, man, does it have to be on Sunday? Does it have to be in front of this many people? Does it have to be? And again, these people are, they mean well, and they're just walking through their emotions, their fears, everything like that. So, I look to meet them where they're at. But I like to say it this way. I'm like, you're in a room where almost everybody, is almost guaranteed that they're there for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're there encouraging you. They're excited. They want to hear your story. I mean, I've talked to people like, man, you remember that baptism from 9 o'clock? Like that moved, all of these things.
Yeah.
So I say, listen, you're going to find yourself in a context with far less people, but those people might not be for what you're about to say. Right. And so it's, having conversations around that and telling them this is an opportunity to grow. I just actually had a conversation with someone that we baptized in the fall, and they wanted to meet up with me, and they were laying out all the struggles that they've had since then. And then they asked me, the big question, do you think this is spiritual? Because I feel like this has been happening since I got baptized. And I say, bingo. Yep. Now, again, I'm biased, right? I think everything's spiritual. There's always something, someone or something at play deeper than the material or the obvious. But even having that conversation. But I also tell them, man, it's almost certain that someone is going to get baptized as a result of seeing you get baptized this morning. And I always like to encourage them. You're already helping somebody take that next step. I just hear it. I've heard it so many times over all the years I've done it. So
yeah. Well, that's the thing. I love that we help people to articulate their grace story for them, because I do think that it gives you an ability then to be equipped to share more and more. I also think, though, that we're actually helping them to encourage the rest of the body, because people don't always realize the beauty of their own story. It's just, this is my life, So they realize that they've embraced Jesus, and they realize that the gospel is true, and they see Jesus begin to transform their life. But especially early on, they may not realize the stark contrast that's about to play out in their life, And so I had someone similarly say to me yesterday afternoon, I feel like the stories of baptism that I hear are some of the greatest messages ever preached at the chapel. I was like, I love that. Just this person isn't part of any process. They aren't trying to say anything they're not saying there. They're just saying, man, like, these are compelling. These are impactful.
Absolutely.
And so when we start to realize that, I think oftentimes people do hesitate to take a step. Part of it's fear. Part of it's embarrassment if it's been a long time. Those kinds of things can be real. I do think there's also a factor of, I don't know that my story is really that compelling.
Yeah.
And I would encourage all of us to remember, like, the individual story of grace in our life is beautiful.
Absolutely.
Whatever that story is. And the more that we sit and we ponder that, we realize just how wretched a sinner I was.
That's
and
right.
just how amazing the grace is that I've been saved into.
Yeah. I run into that a lot with students, right? Because if you're a young person getting baptized, not all, but certainly many, they've grown up in the church, and they'll say things like, oh, I don't have that great of a testimony. And I was like, whoa, hold on. You have the testimony of a God who placed you in a family that loves the Lord.
Absolutely.
That has brought you up. That's an incredible testimony of the goodness of God.
That's good.
And we all experience his grace. Just because you've grown up in the church and you've known of the things of God doesn't mean that you intrinsically follow all of the things of God and are not coming into experience your need for grace. And it is a beautiful thing that God placed you in a place where you heard of him at a young age, and he drew you through that. So, we don't all have to have that. Of course, it's wonderful to hear a story of contrast where somebody walked a very different life, but it's just as beautiful to see God's goodness.
Yeah. And I think, for those that might be thinking they don't really have a story, and even to Oren's point there, I mean, this, first and foremost, we're testifying to the greatest story, and that's Jesus, right? And God's grace meets us all in different places, but also what a grace that it is that if you haven't lived such a life of great contrast, what a grace that is to you, right? To even think about it that way, that you might not have to deal with some of the ramifications of some of those decisions or some of those things. Like, I think to be able to recognize some of those things is also important. And, and at the same time, we celebrate, the one who's walked a completely, opposite lifestyle of the gospel and has come to Christ. But that's also just as beautiful as somebody who's, grown up with the gospel, and you may not have to deal with the same effects, but the gospel's impacted your life, and you get to share about that too. And I think we all have to see that and understand that this is about God and what he's done and how he's working in the lives of people, and to celebrate the grace of Jesus in each other's lives. So, But yeah, if you're listening and you're thinking, yeah, my story's not so, it is beautiful because you're testifying to a Savior who's done so much for us.
Yeah. And one of the great things about getting to walk people through this process is whatever the reason is, whether they think their story isn't moving or whether they have nerves or, legitimate anxiety, we don't say, oh, you have to do this, right? This is not a scriptural command that you get up in front of the church. But as we get to share the heart behind why we do what we do, people recognize, and to everyone that I've walked through this process with, and there have been so many, they have all ended up with, yeah, this is worth doing. It may be a challenge. It may be something I need to talk through and prepare for, but they've all decided this is worth doing. And it is because of what Jay said about the impact that it has on your church family. And you get up there to get baptized, someone is going to see that and be like, hey, I can do that too. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. I think that this whole conversation takes us to, the broader sense of this series, which is, what is a disciple? And disciples of Jesus, we have to remember and we have to remind ourselves, and we have to go back to the scripture to be informed on what is the call in our life. What is it that we're actually called to do and be? What has Jesus saved us into, not just from? And so I think that, Pastor Jerry at the end of his message said something like, if you can't be a living witness to the church through baptism, how do you ever think you're going to be a living witness to the world? I do think that we don't try to make it scary. Like, we're not trying to create an intimidating factor. In fact, I have the same conversation. I think every time I do baptism, I ask the question, are you nervous today? Yeah, I'm nervous. Don't be. That's easy for you to say. I understand, but listen, these people, they're so excited for you. And they come out every time going, that was so great. I got hugs in the atrium. People were high-fiving me. The next week, someone's like, hey, you got baptized last week, right? Like, there is beauty to that. But I also think it isn't a terribly bad thing that there's a bit of wrestling with the intimidation, I would say. Because in a sense, you're experiencing what you'll experience in the world, which is, hey, I'm standing in line at the grocery store. I feel like the Spirit's prompting me to say something about Jesus to this person. That's a little scary too, right? Like, being a witness in the world can be intimidating, and it's good for us as believers together to encourage behavior that leads to us living out the life of Christ that we're called into.
Yeah. And I think even with that, you think of, just the opportunities that it provides for us to be encouraged in the Spirit of God, right? You see somebody give their testimony and you hear of those things. You see the person, but it also it brings such glory to Jesus because it recognizes, man, he is in the business of changing lives. And what a great thing that we as a church, that we get to celebrate. I don't know how many baptisms that we do, but man, that's a grace to our church. And I'm so grateful that, we're a part of a church body and family where we see baptisms regularly. Like, this is something that we get to regularly see. And, that's worth our just gratitude to the Lord, because, that's it's not necessarily common everywhere. And we just thank God for that. And even as you're talking, John, to be able to help prepare for being able to share our story. I mean, that's right. Baptism is a moment, but the training and the discipleship process, that goes beyond just a day, right? It goes into our everyday living. And if we can get comfortable with, hey, this is what Christ has done, and I can share about that, man, that's the impact that can have in the world is incredible.
Yeah. So all that said, I think we could take the rest of our time here and talk a little bit on a very practical side. I think we've reaffirmed what we heard in the message on Sunday, which is that baptism is a command. It's something that if you are a follower of Jesus, that you've been instructed to do this. And I think we heard a great message on why, right? I mean, very quickly, Pastor Jerry talked about this. What is the question? What is a what is baptism a witness of? A witness of a Savior who forgives sin. It is this reminder, this visual picture to say, this isn't just a intellectual identification with a teaching. It is a transformative work by the Spirit that we died with Christ and were raised with him. He said it's a testimony or a witness to the one true God, Father, Son, and Spirit. He talked about it being a witness of participation in Christ's life and identification with Christ's church. I would encourage you to listen to that and dig in. He did a great job of explaining that. I think what we want to do is just encourage you to do that, to take that step. And I recognize in all those that there can be, even after everything we just said, there can be some things that get in the way. And I'll bring one up, and then we can maybe talk about a couple others. I'll bring one up that's that may be on some people's minds, and it's just, I don't know that I can be baptized. Maybe you are physically disabled. Maybe you have you have a Metaport. There are some things legitimately that people have said, in my heart, I want to be obedient, but I could never do that. My doctor said I can't be put underwater, or I couldn't get up and down those stairs. I think it'd be good for us to just reassure you in some of those things that this is not, I think one of you guys said a minute ago, that we're not trying to put barriers in the way. In fact, that quote that I opened with about cold water and warm water kind of speaks to that heart, right?
Exactly.
Like the goal is to be baptized.
Right.
If you can do it this way, this is great. If you can't, then try this. And if that doesn't work, pour water over their head. Like I've actually heard some wild stories of people who tried very unique things in order to make sure someone was baptized. You guys have all had these kinds of conversations on our team here. What are some of the unique ways that we've helped people to take that step?
Yeah, I know. Certainly. Yeah. So if you think that I can't fit in on a Sunday service in one of our baptismal tubs, and you're like, I can't do that, we have had conversations, and so that's what I would invite you to do, because again, you're not talking about we have this legalistic view that it has to be ABC, and so I've had conversations, and people have been baptized in their homes because they were homebound, and so baptism took place there, and so agreed. I think don't allow that to be prohibitive in terms of reaching out to us, as that we want to. 80 people, right, responded yesterday. Yep. We have a process in place. If we just follow our process in place, some of those 80 people might not get baptized till next year, right? And so we recognize that. And again, knowing that none of our processes are perfect or anything like that. But so we've got that in our mind. I just want to say we're an open door. We're open to have these conversations. I had a conversation with somebody, and this might not necessarily be helpful, but they're like, I want to get baptized, but if I could, I'd really like Pastor Jerry to baptize me on a trip to Israel, right? And it's like, okay, well, I don't know. I'm not going to be going on that trip, and I don't.
It wasn't on the interest form yesterday. It wasn't one of the things.
Exactly. But I was like, but don't allow that to be like, hey, until this happens, unless that happens, I'm not getting baptized, because I think you're missing the point.
That's right. Yeah, we could look for those perfect opportunities to do it and overlook just the simplicity of it. To just, hey, we'll figure it out. We'll make this happen, right? Because it is about that public declaration of what Christ has done in our lives, and that's well said.
I can think of some examples where people, like I said, they have a medical port, or they have, they're wheelchair bound. We've poured water over the heads of people right next to the baptistry. We've done lots of things because the goal is to help someone take a step of obedience. And so maybe you've never considered that before. Maybe you just already assumed in your mind, I can't do that, so I can't do this. Yeah. And the goal is to be obedient to Christ's command. There's a uniqueness maybe to your baptism, but there's also such power in your testimony and saying, but I'm still going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's really good for us to remember.
And enter the process, right? If you stand outside, like, of course, we have a process of how we go about things. We're not tied to those, but enter in. Don't say, oh, I don't know how I feel about that particular step in the chapel's process, so I'm going to just back off and not do it. No, enter in. Yeah. And if there is something, we'll work through it. We'll sit down one-on-one and talk through it. We've had that, there's a 4-week class, and I don't know if I can, I work and I can't. okay, that's not a very hard barrier to overcome. We can meet for coffee and go through this material. You know, we're doing some one night classes for exactly that reason, because there are folks that can't commit to 4 straight weeks. And even in that, if you miss a class, okay, we're not kicking you out. You know, but don't let any of these barriers, whether it's a medical barrier, whether it's a time barrier, keep you from entering in and saying, hey, I'm interested in being baptized, because we'll figure it out. We want to see it too.
Yeah. I even think of a young adult who, you know, God got a hold of him. He grew up here, you know, like in this church, in a sense, but God grabbed a hold of his heart on a summer in between years of undergrad. He's going away to school, got connected at a church down there, and that pastor was like, "Man, Jake, you've been following hard after the Lord for 2 years, and you're not baptized." And he pressed into that, like, "Hey, you've been following Jesus for 2 years. This is a step of obedience." You know, almost to the point where you haven't taken that step. Are you living in a sense of disobedience as a result? He really took that to heart. He reached out to me, and same thing. We did his the begin class over you know, over like FaceTime and whatnot, and then we baptized him just like a couple months ago, and he wanted to respond right away, and I was like, we can you know, help make that happen. And you know, he's looking for a job, and he might take a job in the Northwest of the United States, but this was his home church, and this is what he wanted to do. And credit to that pastor for for saying, hey, this is where you know. So again, we'll work with you.
And I think, you know, even playing into the discipleship series that we've been in, for those that are listening who have been baptized as believers, you know, I think that's a great example of how we can even make application from the message that we've heard even yesterday, right? Message wasn't just for those who needed to get baptized and get baptized. It's also for all, right? All of us. Even for those who have been baptized as believers. And I think that's a great application point, even for those who have been baptized.
You're saying to encourage others.
To encourage others, yeah. You know, that's a part of the discipleship process, and to make disciples is to baptize, right? And so
that's right.
Even think of people that you've been pouring into, people in your community group, and I think that's a great question, just to, you know, go around your group and, hey, has everyone been baptized here? And if yes, tell us about it. If not, really why not? You know, those are just good things to just keep on our radars, because the command's the command. And so how do we embrace that and help encourage that in the lives of other people?
And it's for all of our good. You know, when you come across someone who hasn't, and you can handle that conversation well, it's a really edifying conversation to remind them your story has value.
That's right.
Your obedience matters.
Yes.
You're going to be celebrated by taking this step. So it's really good. With a little bit of time we have left, I just had one other barrier in my mind that I think we could tackle. And that's, I think there are people who hesitate to be baptized because they're afraid of offending family. I think there are many who, you know, they were baptized as an infant. We heard preaching on that yesterday as well. But it's not so much about their own personal view of baptism. It's how could I tell my parents that I'm going to do this? It negates my upbringing. So have you guys had conversations like that?
I actually was going to bring that up, so I'm glad you did. In my mind, I was like, I would really like to touch on this, particularly one because of our context where we find ourselves. So certainly I've had a number of young adults, particularly young adults that I've worked with, and you can even see the uniqueness of their season, right? Because they're young adults, but their parents still have, you know, a lot of influence over their lives, and some of them still live under their roof, and they're like, I want to get baptized, but I know what this conversation is going to look like, or maybe this conversation is going to look like this. Jay, can you help me? Can we talk through this? And I've just been so proud of the ones that have said, I know this might be a challenging conversation based off of my family and family traditions and how I was raised, and my baptism wasn't good enough. And you think, you know, all of these things, and just helping them work through that. I will say this, certainly, it's not 100% all the time, but most of them, the conversations had gone better than they thought it would. And I just try to help them frame it of, I appreciate your viewpoint of why you thought it was important for me to be baptized and how you wanted me to. Now let me follow up with this is that faith is actually very real now. And now I want to say, hey, I'm choosing this based off of my profession of faith.
That's right.
I've just seen just how those conversations have gone well. And so, again, I'd want to encourage somebody, if you're listening, and that is your biggest barrier of, I wouldn't want to offend a grandparent, I wouldn't want to offend a parent, to just talk with some folks here and pray about it, and then head into a conversation where you're prayerful, where you're clothed in humility, but also where you can speak from from a place of what Jesus has really done in your life, what he's doing in your life, and how you want to take that step. I don't know if anybody else has
I think that's I think what you said about, thanking, saying, hey, what you did, this faith is real now.
Yes.
Like, I appreciate what your heart was and wanting me to grow up in the faith. And now that faith has taken root and it's leading me to this decision. I think that's a great heart to have that conversation. And I've actually experienced that conversation from a little different angle too, serving families. And, oftentimes I'll have a parent come up to me and say, hey, I'd love little Johnny to get baptized. And I have, I joke about it, but in a serious, to make it light, but I'll say, oh, that's great that's what you want. But I say to folks, I don't really care that you want little Johnny to be baptized. And I try to find a way to say it nicely, but it's like, that's wonderful. I understand. I'm a parent. I have that heart too. What does little Johnny have to say about it? And if he wants to come up to me and talk to me about being baptized, or come up to his small group leader in Chapel Kids or at Chapel Students, then that's the conversation that we want to have. And it allows some great conversations with parents to say, that's wonderful. Of course you do. I have that same heart for my children. And how can you cultivate in your son or daughter that same desire? And are you coming on their behalf, or are you coming with your mom heart or your dad heart trying to make this happen? And then what do we do with that, right? How do we disciple our kids in a way to point them to Jesus, to want to take those steps on their own?
That's right. Even to that question too, I came across it as recently as of Friday. So I was talking to someone, and they were wrestling through this exact idea. Not necessarily for them, but for their kid. So, and how they were going to do things in their own family, and what that was looking like, and how that was relating to grandparents, and just all of that stuff. Because they were just going to go about it a little bit differently, not have their baby baptized and all that stuff, and afraid of the perception of that, what that was going to be, family pressures, like some of those things. So, and it was just a great opportunity for me to talk with him about, it's good to still show honor and show honor to your parents, right? Yeah. That's what we're all called to. That's as disciples, that's what we do. We show honor. And whether or not everyone's always worthy of that, we leave that there, but we show that. But at the same time, you're not under the command of children obey your parents anymore. You're a grown adult raising your own kids now, so you have to now think about, what is it that Christ is calling you to do? And by the way, I was affirming like what God was doing in his life. I mean, he was seeing the spot on, and I was just encouraging him to say, man, like, this is you following Jesus, but still showing honor to your parents, but still living with the conviction of what you feel like Jesus is asking of you. Yeah. And that's what I was just encouraging in his life and in his heart, in which he was totally at peace with and knew what the Lord was asking of him. And I just think that's a helpful distinction to make, is that any command of Jesus as followers of him, we obey, right? We say yes to that, regardless of what anybody thinks, even our own parents at times. But we still show honor, and we can still show respect. And that's different than, hey, I'm just going to make this decision or not make this decision just to make parents happy or anybody happy.
I think the instinct towards honor is great. it also ministers to people when you can pull out something, whether it was their intention or not, and redeem it in a conversation.
Absolutely.
Say, thank you for the investment you made.
That's good.
And you're doing yourself a favor because you are distinguishing yourself by taking this step that maybe no one else in your family ever has. So when other things in your life start looking different, it won't be the first thing. And you've had that conversation.
That's exactly
You've already
right.
introduced this idea to them, which can be very helpful to you in the ongoing life of Christ you're going to live out. So,
Yeah, because if
so
if this decision is just solely based on family pressures or whatever, then you can be tied to that.
That's right.
For multiple decisions down the road.
That's right.
And that's what that was part of the conversation as well as having. But when you can make that stance now, I mean, that does open up the doors to be able to have those redemptive conversations, pull that out, and to be able to honor Christ, but also, hey, stand up for what you believe is right while still honoring whoever it is.
That's right.
You know?
Guys, that's so good. What a great conversation. We could even go longer, but I know we're up on time. I just would encourage our listeners in this, if your next step of obedience is to get baptized, we encourage you to take that step. If you're a listener and you've already taken that step, whatever that next step is, because there always is a step of obedience that's inherent to following Jesus, is taking steps, whether it's steps of trust or faith or obedience. So I want to encourage you to do that. So if you are interested in taking that step towards baptism, go to thechapel.com/baptisms. We have that interest form. We will have it up. We are looking to make that as easy as possible to take that next step. I'm not saying that you're going to get baptized by in 24 hours or in a few weeks, but we're going to help you take that next step, and we're going to help that process. We're going to look to obviously expedite that process so you can follow the Lord in obedience with that. So as always, if you have any questions, you can email us at chapelplus@thechapel.com. Plus is spelled Plus, not just a symbol. But if you have any questions, any comments, we'd love to hear from you. But just know this, Chapel family, you are prayed for, you are loved, and we look forward to connecting with you again on the next episode of the Chapel Plus podcast. Take care. Grace and peace.